All right. Hello, hello, hello. Going to give this a few beats for folks to sign in. We are having our open dialogue, formerly known as the Happiest Hour, which is my monthly live Q&A where I invite special guests on to talk about specific things as it relates to open relationships, non-monogamy, and everything therein. So we're right on the dot at 5 o'clock Pacific. So we're just going to give it a beat. Our special guest this week is renowned attorney Lisa Bloom. I'm going to let her introduce herself because she will do a far better job than I will. We'll just give her a few minutes to get on. Signing on here. Hello, hello. Welcome, welcome. We're just waiting for our special guest, Lisa Bloom, today. She's going to join us and we're going to talk about all the legal implications, the protections and lack thereof that currently exist for non-monogamous families, multi-partner dynamics, and polyamorous dynamics as well. We're just going to give Lisa a few minutes here. But if you guys have any questions, if you have anything specific you want to ask me, or if you have anything specific you want to ask Lisa, doesn't have to be exactly about what we're talking about today, which is all the legal, lack of legal protections that are available. Lisa said she is ready, but she has to request it. So I am going to talk to her on my computer so that she will join us. She needs to request to hop in through here. Well, bear with me, y'all. I appreciate you. All right. We're just giving Lisa a beat here while she logs in. We're going to be talking about all the or lack of legal protections that currently exist, but that are starting to come about at a city level, at least, and where we can hope to see things moving in the future. My special guest today is Lisa Bloom. She's a renowned civil rights and women's rights attorney. She's been using her growing and large platform to talk about all kinds of different marginalized groups. And there she is. There's Lisa. Hello. She is requesting. We have success, ladies and gentlemen and humans. Soon as her video feed goes into space and then comes back and merges with mine. We shall see her momentarily. But yes, for everyone joining, welcome, welcome, welcome. This is Open Dialogue, formerly known as the Happiest Hour, brought to you by me, Iseman at Passport to Pleasure. I have a special guest join me every month to talk about all the different things that affect us in the world of polyamory and non-monogamy. And today, especially, we are going to be speaking about the lack of legal protections, but the growing legal awareness that's happening at a city level for multi-partner families. We are having a little bit of a technical issue. Not sure what's going on. Y'all are fabulous. Let's see what I can do from my end. The answer is not much. Lisa, if you're still in there, it looks like you are. If you want to maybe try requesting again. She's unable to join. This is fun. Not sure what that's about. um, let's see. You know what? I'm gonna hop off here for a second. Yeah, she's gonna try and exit and then try again. We are at the mercy of the technology gods, and they're cranky today, so we will have to abide by their mood. Does anyone in the meantime have any questions they want to ask either me or Lisa? I'm happy to answer any questions regarding myself and my own non-monogamy journey. Happy to answer general questions about alternative relationship dynamics. And there's Lisa, we did it! I don't know what happened. Hi, honey.
You have better lighting than me, but you're also
But the
just
camera's not staying. You're just gonna look at my
just
clavicle.
beautiful.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, thank you, thank you. We have some folks diving in with us here today. I'll do a quick intro, and then I would love to have you introduce yourself because you're just going to do a better job. You are. So hello, everyone. Welcome. I'm Iseman with Passport to Pleasure. This is my monthly live Q&A called Open Dialogue. Used to be called the Happiest Hour. We're changing the name. I have a special guest every month chime in with me and talk about something related to non-monogamy, open relationship dynamics, multi-partner families. Specifically today, we're speaking with Lisa Bloom, and we're going to talk about the lack of legal protections, but the growing legal awareness for multi-partner dynamics. So Lisa, I'd love to have you just introduce yourself quickly to everyone. Hello, hello.
Thank you so much for having me, and hello, everybody. This is Lisa Bloom. I'm civil rights attorney. Discrimination, harassment, and abuse. I've been representing folks like LGBT people, people of color, and overwhelmingly women in sexual harassment, sexual assault cases for coming up on 40 years, believe it or not. And this is such an interesting area of the law to me. So, Allie, you are really a leader in this field. You are an expert on non-monogamy and polyamorous relationships. I salute you for it because he has the right to do whatever makes them happy as long as they are consenting adults. And I think consent in your community is the best of any community. So um, I'm all about it, and I think that it's really important to protect the legal rights of people who are making choices for themselves, and it doesn't affect anybody else if they don't want to do it. So they should have legal rights, and I'm happy to talk to you about it.
Thank you. And I want a fun fact for everyone. Lisa and I have actually known each other for, I don't, counting, I don't know, a decade? I don't, is something
Oh,
like somewhere around there?
we
Uh,
trail together. But that's
exactly. We're trail buddies, but that'll be a completely different conversation. We'll do it another time. But why I wanted to have you on is obviously you've been using your platform, you've been growing your platform with the work that you do. And I had the pleasure of seeing you actually speak out about this. And obviously we've spoken about this ourselves in our friendship, but to see you step out in this way publicly about this one, we don't really see a lot of support outside of the community itself. There are certainly organizations, and I'll list them as well in the captions on here after we wrap up. But I love you already, and to experience you just taking a stand in this way was very meaningful. So I'm very grateful that you're making the time today to sit down and talk with us.
Well, it's absolutely my pleasure. And, I think also always very important for everyone to stand up for people in groups that you're not a member of. It's very easy to support your own group, but support each other.
Yeah. Oh, and Mama Julie wants you to know that you are the best lawyer ever in all caps. I'm not going to argue. I cannot argue with science. Um, so thank you, Julie. I want to start. I think it's really important to note, of course, all of your work within the LGBT community. There's an interesting perspective and friction potentially in this component because there are about 4 to 5% of the population in America currently in a consensually non-monogamous relationship, which at least reporting, which is about the same as people who identify as LGBTQ. So we have a group who's been able, thankfully, to get legal protections and recognition as an orientation. And now we're seeing some interesting pushback where even public figures like Dan Savage, who's a noted personality in this space, saying that this is not an orientation. It's not the same thing. It's something you do. It's not something you are. And so I'd love to just kind of look at that for a minute, because I'll say initially for me, it is an orientation for me. Discovering this about me changed my entire life. It is how I love. It is how I relate.
Yeah.
It is something I didn't even know was possible. So there was no way for me to be so without knowing so. So I'd love to just hear your thoughts.
Right. A lot of people live their whole lives straight because they really don't even think it's an option, but it doesn't change, right? And so you try to fit yourself into the mainstream mold until you decided, to live as who you really are, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think a component there is looking at the nature of law, right? It's not subtle. Like law doesn't have room for subtleties or nuance or anything like that. And yeah.
Let me address that point because it's such an important point. It really doesn't matter to me whether it's a choice or whether it's an orientation. What matters to me is that it's consenting adults who are making choices about their own bodies, and it's nobody else's freaking business. And nobody should be look at you, Allie Iseman. Highly intelligent, responsible member of society. How could anybody discriminate against you because of who you love or how you love? Just deeply offensive to me. And I think it's very un-American, and it should be offensive to everyone. So it used to be when we were talking about constitutional rights for LGBTQ folks, we were talking about immutable characteristics.
Exactly.
The gay community be like race or like gender. Gender we used to think was immutable too. But let's talk about race. Okay, so I think we can all agree race is immutable. So which means you can't change it. You're born a certain race. That's your race for your entire life. You can't change it. And so early on, the civil rights thinking was, well, it'd be really unfair to discriminate against somebody based on the color of their skin because it's an immutable characteristic. They can't change it. That strikes us as very unfair. And then subsequent groups tried to sort of glom onto that same model, like gender and like LGBTQ. So I mean, look, you could talk about a person who's bisexual. They can make a choice, men or women. They could make a choice. So is it immutable? I mean, I guess their bisexuality might be immutable, but they could make a choice to be with same gender or other gender. So anyway, I think it's not particularly important anymore because we don't have to rely on constitutional rights as much. We have most states. We certainly have nationwide laws protecting people from employment discrimination based on race, sex, religion, national origin, and now sexual orientation. And then in states like California, where I practice, there's a list that's so long I can't remember it all, but things like marital status, parental status, veteran status, in some cases. So of course, this should be added. I mean, I think it's just very basic. You shouldn't, what difference does it make? It's not relevant to a job. It's not relevant to housing. It's not relevant to the things that we protect people from in civil rights law. As people
Yeah.
are following the rules, as
Yeah.
renters, please doing a good job. They shouldn't get discriminated against because they're in polyamorous relationships or in ethically non-monogamous relationships. That strikes me as just very basic.
I think it often it comes from fear, right? Is where the defensive and the wanting to control what other people can and cannot do, especially legally, comes from, and that comes from ignorance. It is easy to be fearful when you don't really know, and knowing something new takes effort. And so that's a whole other a whole other bag of worms. But you brought up housing, which I think is an important one. What I've seen the pushback on that is, the claim of wanting to prevent boarding houses, basically, and subleases and things like that. Well, that can be as simple as creating some sort of framework for showing the relational dynamic for what it is, or some sort of thing, rather than just this broad strokes
You could have a
no across the board.
little who can live in a
Mm-hmm.
building, right? So you don't have to restrict it based on who's having sex with who, right? I mean, that's not
That's
anybody's
why I'm like, yeah, do we need to videotape? I don't understand.
business. And what I've looked, so there are a couple of jurisdictions, notably like Somerville, Massachusetts.
Yes.
Go.
We love Somerville. We love Somerville. And now they're starting to come through. Somerville was like the first tick. We got Cambridge as well, and Arlington, both in Massachusetts, and now we finally have the West Coast.
What?
We have Oakland coming through last month, and then Berkeley on the 7th of this month.
That's so funny because, as you know, I did a video a month or two ago, and I was like, "What's up, Berkeley? How is
So
Massachusetts so far ahead of you?"
thank you, Lisa.
Berkeley is so groundbreaking, and it so often is. So these three jurisdictions in Massachusetts passed domestic partnership laws, and it's great, but it's just a tiny, tiny start because,
Yeah.
yeah, it's important for people to be domestic partners, and three or more. I mean, that's the idea of what Somerville passed. However many there are, there was a case. I forget what jurisdiction it was in, but there were three men who were in a triangle
Triad.
relationship.
Yeah.
Triad, thank you, and they had a child, and they petitioned the court and they won, where they all three got on the child's birth certificate, which I think is great because the more parents the better, the more adults who assume responsibility for a child.
Yeah.
We should all endorse that because it's less likely that if there's a breakup that the taxpayers have to support the child, right? So
Exactly. Oh, I love that angle. I love that. Yes, exactly.
People used to say, like, as I was a single mom, people would say, well, don't you think a two-parent family is better? I'm like, yeah, three or four,
Yeah.
even better than that. More adults who want to come and take care of kids and take responsibility and be on the hook financially.
Yeah.
As far as I can.
Yeah. Well, and it goes back to our roots, right? I'm so sick of hearing the term traditional marriage, traditional relationships. Our traditional relationships are communal. Like non-monogamy is far more of our history than monogamy, which is only about 5,000-10,000 years old.
I didn't.
So, yeah, yeah, and
That,
and to your point, like that communal raising of children is actually something that is brought up frequently in like why we can't protect these family dynamics, because it's very unhealthy, and it's sexual deviancy, and it always goes to sex, which is so interesting. Like, first of all, there's anything inherently wrong with sex? No. But B, this is not just about sex. This is about love, partnership, cohabitation, co-raising. This is family, which is a lot more than just sex. I mean, most families in America are sexless, but that's again another conversation for another day. And I agree to your point, and I love the taxpayer angle as well. The more responsible adults you have involved in raising a child or children, the more types of relationship dynamics that child or children can see, healthy dynamics, healthy communication, ways of navigating conflict. And then, yes, of course, you have all the shared support, even without children, just a household in general. You have more support for all the, various needs and chores and things like that, sharing bills, etc. There is only benefit to all of us by having this available and protected.
Really, the cutting edge civil rights issue of our time is protection for polyamorous folks. And that would include, protection against discrimination in housing, employment, other areas, business establishment. And that would include protecting them on the family law side, which would be things like domestic partnerships and getting them on it's for children. And
Well,
I
that,
come for
yeah,
time.
yeah, it's like we're starting to see, the dominoes, the chips fall, whatever the saying is. I mean, what is so what is special about Somerville is the ordinance is the first one specifically preventing employment discrimination,
Mhm.
but the limitation is because it's at a city level, it can only be enacted for city
Right.
employees. So the city can't tell, a national corporation who they can and cannot discriminate against, apparently. I'd love your thoughts on like how we can see that. No, that's what the write ups are saying anyway.
So, for example, most of the cases I do are sexual harassment and sexual assault cases, and I'm just reviewing a case today in New York City. And thank goodness New York City has they open up a window, which means a longer period of time for sexual abuse victims to come forward. Doing a case where the woman was abused from in the early 2000s. It ended in 2012, which means it would be time barred under the federal and state law, but not under city law. So the city law went further. They opened a window for sexual abuse victims. So I think city laws can go further. They probably just didn't want to, probably just to get it passed, they had to make compromises. And people get upset at that. And I'm like, just get it moving, just get it started, get your foot in the door, pass an
Yeah,
order. It's fine if you have to make compromises. I'm just a very practical person. Let's get the ball rolling. Let's get the law,
yeah,
and we can later. But the people on the right who are so terrified of people like you, Allie,
I'm
because you're so
horrifying.
that they always think the world's going to come to an end, like if we're going to have marriage. And guess what? It didn't come to an end. And now everybody on the right is in favor of LGBTQ rights too. Well, not entirely, but they're for the most part, at least L and G. So I think that it's important to get the ball rolling, to get started, to get people's rights to sort of normalize, demystify, very much like the gay rights movement. Everybody can see, okay, this is fine. These are people we know. It's not a big deal.
Yeah, and you're right. It's those first steps, right? It's not going to be 0 to 60 necessarily, and that's okay because that's the process. There's a marketing term. I hope I say it right. I believe it's called lost cost or cost loss, something like that. It's a little bit of a tongue twister, but it's the incentive. It's basically the brand will lose money on that initial purchase, but
Mhm.
because it gets them to purchase, it gets them into a purchasing mindset, and they will. Then it's the same kind of thing here that you're talking about legally. Let's get the first
That's
ordinance in.
here.
Lost leader. Thank you. Like it's somewhere in there. Yeah.
Yeah,
Is there a different legal term or is it the same thing? Like in regards to this sort of thing.
term for it. But I'm just in favor of like, let's just get this party started.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And I'd love to hear, with all the work that you've done in your career, are we, do you feel that we're seeing what makes sense? Like we're seeing the first stages, we're on schedule, like this is moving in the right direction. We're not, too slow, too fast. Like this is kind of how it goes.
Definitely too slow. It's always too slow for me. I mean,
Yeah.
people's lives are happening,
Yeah.
let's, but
Yeah.
it's too slow. I think we should have these protections. They should be in place. Um, I think there's much to be learned from the LGBTQ rights movement, which was very effective, especially in getting same-sex marriage getting a ruling from the U.S. Supreme Court. When I was in law school in the 1980s, I wanted to do a paper on why same-sex marriages should be allowed under the Constitution. And my law school professor said, "You will never see same-sex marriage in your lifetime.
Cool.
This is a topic, forget it." And
Wow.
now we have it. So there's actually a new book out about how the gay rights movement did it, and I want to read that book because it was extremely effective and a relatively short period of time. It was like 20 years or something, which is
Yeah.
for rights movement to go from like zero to constitutional rights. I mean, it was the Supreme that gave us same-sex marriage, and we were well behind a lot of other countries. But
Yeah.
eventually, so it should be the same thing, I think, for ethically non-monogamous folks.
Do you mind sharing if you remember the name of that book? Just if it's a great recounting, we can always learn.
I have to
Uh,
Google it.
I put you on the spot. That's okay. We can drop it in later too.
Uh, I don't know. I'll have to add it in the
Yeah.
comments.
All good. We'll pop it in. I'm going to include a bunch of different resources in the caption for this video because, like I mentioned, there are about five, at least off the top of my head, five organizations that are doing this work actively that were responsible for Oakland and Somerville and everything. And this is an organized effort. What's exciting is I forget exactly which one. I think it's the Modern Family Institute. I believe that is going to be coming out, if it's not already out, a toolkit that you can take to your city council person that has everything you need to take to your city, and it'll include, I'm reading it because I can't memorize all it. It'll include relevant research, educational information, case examples, legal insights, and advocacy strategies, because this is going to be a grassroots effort at this stage. Oh, and I'm seeing a question pop in here from Barbie. Lisa, can women file a class action lawsuit against the GOP for stripping us of our bodily autonomy?
I love the idea.
I love it.
Is no, but we can go to the polls and vote
Yeah.
in no, which I encourage everybody to do. Vote blue no matter who. And you've got problems with Biden or the Democrats. I hear you and I get it. And the right is 1,000 times worse. So under our system, these are the two choices we have. There's one side that's very clearly on the side of protecting women's right to choose, women's right to bodily autonomy, LGBTQ rights, and not to mention protecting the environment and a lot of other things that are really important. And then there's the other side. So please vote blue.
Yeah. And it's like an important thing to note. We can't have perfection as our goal, right? It has to be progress. Because like you said, yeah, it's not to have an overused term, but and this is extreme, not literal, lesser of two evils. Like, yeah, it's not a perfect solution, but it's better than the alternative. So let's head in that direction and see what can be accomplished.
I actually think Biden's a really good president. So I'm in the like 17% of America.
Yeah.
I actually pay attention to the policies and the things that he's gotten done, and the most significant climate change bill, which is very important to me, and massively diverse appointments. So many African Americans appointed to the bench, which has never happened before. It's just groundbreaking, and huge support for LGBTQ rights. Trans people in the White House getting celebrated, and just all kinds of things. I could go on and on. So care that he's old. I don't care that he forgets a word now and then. He's the guy. He's, we got to vote for him. We got to do calls for him. And I could go on and on, but we'll get you back to.
Yeah. Like, I'm gonna not be able to add as much here. But yeah. I just want to start. I'm looking at my notes because there was just I'm on top of what's coming out, but it was really fun to prepare for this, to really do like a deep dive and how did we even get here, and to really go through, because I actually learned something in 2015. There was a case in Hartford, Connecticut, where they made the determination of what's called a functional family. And it was it was much earlier, of course, like all the other movements for obesity really started in 2020 with Somerville, with that initial domestic partnership. They at the city level again voted that domestic partners, they can care for each other, such as like visiting each other in the hospital, et cetera. And then we fast forward to 2023 when we actually had the ordinance that prevents employment discrimination, which was like a huge leap forward. So yeah, just again, all these terminologies. I know we touched on it a little bit earlier, and that the law doesn't generally have room for the ambiguities and the in-betweens. Can you talk a little bit about why definitions are important, even if it is, imperfect, et cetera?
Yeah, you really touched touched on it, Allie. I think if people hear domestic partnership, they may think like, oh, well, why does it really matter as long as people are living together? It matters a lot, because if somebody's in the hospital, do you have the right to visit them?
Yep.
Dies without a will, which most people do, are you going to have the right to inherit from them? There's hundreds of benefits of having a domestic partnership. And the one that the Supreme Court recognized most fully in the same-sex marriage decision and other decisions that have recognized gay rights over the years is just fundamental human dignity and respect. We really have to respect relationships of consenting adults. If 3 people, 4 people, or 20 people have decided to be a polycule or a happy functioning unit, and that's how they're living their lives, it's up to everybody else to show respect for that. And of course, they should be able to visit each other in the hospital, to inherit from each other, to not have to testify against each other in court. I mean, all kinds of benefits to be able to bring a lawsuit. Let's say you're in a car accident, God forbid. Your domestic partner is the one that has the right to bring that lawsuit if you're incapacitated, has the one as your next of kin if God forbid somebody passes away. So otherwise you're just left high and dry, and it's really unfair. I think that just the traditional marriage is was maybe a good start. But there's a lot of people living other ways who are really wonderful human beings like you, Allie, and they should have full legal rights.
Yeah. Well, marriage as we have it now, I mean, it's really like we touched on a little bit earlier, monogamous marriage really came about 5, 10,000 years ago with the rise in agricultural society. And it's the strongest theories are that it's related more to really land ownership and inheritance more than anything. And, you know, wives were property for a good period of time. And then religion kind of took it and ran with it. And the biggest shift was they attached it to morality. And that's where we get stuck and mired in this sexual deviation, and it's not safe for children and all this stuff, when it's just people building partnership and family and homes, and everything that you just stated should be available to them for all that effort and commitment that they have going into this relationship together, no matter how many people are involved.
Right, right. I wonder what is really the other side. People just saying ick, I don't like it, I don't understand it.
It seems like I would love a actual argument that makes sense, but I have not yet seen one other than gross.
Yeah, that kind of what you hear on a daily basis as you're out there.
Oh yes. Oh, they're the trolls are rather consistent. In regards to, yes, it's gross. You know, calling me all kinds of fun names about what I should be doing professionally. And yeah, it's very consistent. So it's not, none of it's surprising. None of it is of value. None of it's contributing anything interesting, because I am available to hear another argument. I am interested in hearing another perspective, but gross isn't a perspective. There's no value add there. There's nothing I can work with. Let me know where you're coming from. I'm happy to have that conversation.
Right. And where do people come from with like your sexuality is different from mine, so I'm going to shame you for it? Like, I mean, it's everybody's sexuality is different from everybody else's sexuality.
Well, and what strikes me so much about this too is the not even willful ignorance, the pretending as though the standard of monogamous marriage that we have now is like pristine, that 43% of the population is reporting infidelity. Again, reporting, which means it's higher.
And there's Mama Julie saying trolls are not known for their creativity.
I know, you know.
But that's true. And I think that's an important point that you make is that, I mean, look, I got divorced a year ago, so I'm a good example of how, traditional marriage just doesn't work for a lot of people. And that, the divorce rate is very high. And even people who are in marriages who aren't divorced, many of them are deeply unhappy. So, what is the percentage of people who are in a traditional marriage who are actually happy?
5%.
Is that true?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I should
Right?
be specific, in California.
Oh,
The stats I have are California based. So of the over 70% divorce rate for first time marriages, median income households and above, we have, of the remaining 30%, 25% reporting that they wish they were getting a divorce. So that's 5%. in
Wow.
California that are happy. And again, reporting. And I think it's important to note that too, even with the percentage of people that are reportedly in consensual non-monogamous relationships, it's not safe to be out. You can have your children taken from you. You can lose your job.
Right.
You all manner, you can be kicked out of your home. All manner of things can occur. So it is very risky to come forward. So I would wager it's a lot higher than 4 or 5%.
Right. And you said the percent of infidelity in marriages is 45,
43%. And that's nationally, I believe.
what people are reporting,
And
as you
again, yeah,
say.
and reporting.
Do women cheat more or do men cheat?
I have the statistic and it's in a drawer in the back of my brain. I will drop it in the comments. I have it, just not at the forefront of my mind.
I think I think I think women, but I think women keep it secret more. That's just
Well, a stat that people find interesting is women generally in heteronormative dynamics are the ones that bring up non-monogamy first,
that's so.
more often than not.
Why is
Yeah. Um, I wish I had an answer. I think there's a more of a willingness, maybe. I think there's a social acceptance of women being more explorational, emotional, mutable. And so looking into it, really, we're seeing more availability of information and resources. When I first started exploring back in 2016, I don't know what the hell I was doing. There were no resources, no support, nothing. Now there's people like me where I'm like, I had to learn everything the hard way, so you don't have to. I wish I existed back then. So I think there's just more availability. Oh, I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
so? Yeah, maybe women bring it up more because men are not
Drag me
make,
there.
make, taking care of them as well as they should be.
Well, and there's a lot of insecurities that can get kind of swept under the status quo rug of monogamy. When you have like a prescriptive relationship model, there's a lot of assumptions and not a lot of work and effort that necessarily go into establishing that relationship dynamic. It's just sort of like, okay, we're dating. I'm going to assume that means the same thing to you as it does to me. Now we're engaged. Now we're living together. Now we're married. I'm going to assume all those things mean the same thing to you as they do to me. We're never going to talk about it. And then when you bring in alternatives and you go, hey, let's actually figure this out together. Let's look at this. What are you into? What are you not into? Then you actually have to start dealing with it. And that's scary.
Yeah.
And I try to have empathy for men because there isn't the same level of social support for men to be uncomfortable, for men to be openly not sure, for them to feel insecure, for them to talk about it. So this is a group effort. This is not a gender wars situation to me. This is, we all need to understand that really the conversation isn't even about, traditional versus alternative relationships. It's just about relationship dynamics. It is a conversation about all relationship dynamics.
Well, here. Um, I, I think you're such a, I just want to applaud you, Ellie, because you are such a leader in this field and you very bravely put yourself out there. And I know you take a certain amount of crap from the trolls. You also are really inspiring a lot of people to live their true, authentic selves and to have this life of yes that you really espouse. And you're really a great example for people.
Thank you so much. That means a lot. Yeah, I like to feed the trolls. They're hungry. We do what we can. Oh, I love Julie goes the Disney model of relationships.
I,
I actually love that you said that. I always say it's really important to remember that all the fairy tales, all the Disney movies, they all end at the beginning of the relationship. So this is the work that we need to do to actually have that happily ever after.
woman who was like been asleep for the whole movie and then she just wakes up or she didn't loses her voice to get the man
Yeah,
and like
nightmare. Well, I like to joke to him like, so you're telling me Ariel has been with one dude, she has a cave full of wonders and not a single sex toy? Like not one? Not a like motor powered dingle hopper? Like, come on. Can't buy it. Not true. Oh my gosh. Well, I also want to keep encouraging folks. Please do chime in. Feel free to ask any questions. We've got Lisa here for another 20 minutes. We're just on the fork. She did like a good fork. We're totally going down a different railway here. Let me bring my notes back up so I can get back on track.
boys work.
Oh yeah, so just going back to laws. Oh, sorry, you keep cutting out. Apologies.
Go ahead. No,
Oh no, you were talking.
no,
Go
we're still getting nominations for aerial sex.
for it. Sure. Yes.
Yep.
Um, she was. She's she's great. It's a great story. Back to laws. So we're seeing wonderful progress forward. And what I want to prepare everyone for, and I'd love your input on this, is that pushback. The more progress we make, the more vitriol and the more pushback, the stronger pushback may potentially be. So, noting, for example, in what is it, in Connecticut, Florida, and Alabama, not only is this, it's not just a matter of no protection. There's actually laws that criminalize polyamory through other language. Yeah, I'll send you some of this afterwards. So it's not even just lack of something. We're also seeing actual um, efforts to really make this not possible.
So that, how is that possible? Because
Let me see if I can see where the do. Let me go to my notes. It has to do with
if people
bigamy statutes, I believe.
uh, and
And zoning laws. So in Connecticut, there's zoning law that limits the number of unmarried adults that can live together. And again, they're trying to say for the preventing boarding houses and things like that. And then Florida and Alabama, yeah, polyamory is effectively criminalized through bigamy
bigamy.
statutes. And
So
yeah,
if
and
you're
yeah,
married to one person and you're having sex with another person, even if your partner consents, that's bigamy, and that's a crime. That's
yeah,
ridiculous.
and you can lose your children, and you can because we're adults and apparently can't even make up our own minds about what we consent to.
Finger on something really important, Allie, because this also reminds me of all the work I've done my whole life for LGBT rights. And you could say the same thing. People used to say, well, yeah, these laws are on the books, but they're not really enforced. And for the most part, they weren't. They actually were in some cases, but they get used in other ways, for example, in custody cases,
Yes.
right? So criminal in the eyes of the law in Alabama, and therefore you can't get custody of your child,
Yep.
or therefore pay for an employer to discriminate against you because you are a criminal in the eyes of the law. So
Yep.
you get used against people, and that's why it's important to get rid of these laws. They seem to me to be ripe for a constitutional challenge, similar to sodomy laws, which is how LGBTQ rights. Eventually, we got rid of. When I was in law school, I worked on a case called Hardwick versus Bowers that eventually went up to court, became Bowers versus Hardwick, and that upheld the right of states to criminalize same-sex sex. And it wasn't until many years later in the early 2000s that that was reversed in a beautiful decision. But that these were all the arguments that we made, that it's really important to get rid of. And in that case in Bowers v. Hardwick, it was two men in their own home having consensual sex, and a police officer looking through the curtain and arresting them. I mean, it's just so repulsive to me. Again, to me, it's so un-American, regardless of how you feel about LGBTQ people,
Yeah.
to think of they're looking through a curtain into somebody's home and what they're doing in their own home.
Yeah.
And very similar for polyamorous people, whatever they want to do. God bless.
Well, it makes me think of, we actually talked about this case when it first came up. Oh gosh, I can't remember what his official title was. The chancellor at whichever school who was fired for, I guess, another person either at the school or whatever found a sex tape that he had made with his wife consensually, which they had then chosen to put online behind a paywall
Yes.
at a site that you have to pay to see.
Yeah.
This was reported. They both lost their jobs. Both him and his wife both worked at the school. They had to step down. And I want to know who this person is and why, if they're not being held to the same standard, if it's so wrong. They were paying for this site. In order to see it, they had to pay for this site.
You are so right. And I did a video about this. I think one of the things that's hard for people to accept is how much online sex is a part of human sexuality now.
Yeah.
And especially for older people. And people are like, oh, let me get my smelling salts. But this is a big part of how people have sex now, whether it's sexting, online porn, and everybody needs to just get over it. And the fact that this college dean and his wife, who I think was a professor at the
Yeah.
college, were having consensual sex. As you said, it was posted online. It was behind a paywall, and oh, it's disgusting. Why is it?
Yeah.
Why is sex
Yeah.
disgusting?
We're not even allowed to do it with people we're married to now,
Right.
apparently. So like no one should be having sex ever.
I mean, is to get over it, get over their squeamishness. As I always say, if you don't like it, don't look at it. But you don't get to tell other people what to do with their bodies.
Well, that's why I keep getting stuck on like even if let's agree sex is gross or porn is gross or whatever in a strange world where I feel that way. What happened to this person who reported it? I cannot get over this. The only way that they found it is by purchasing access to this site. They are a member of this site.
Right.
So why are they not being held to the same standard of this whole thing being inappropriate? And this is where the inconsistencies and just again it goes to fear, ignorance, etc. And it's just a shame that it impacts people's. It's strong. It's more than a shame that it impacts people's lives, livelihoods. It impacts us at a legal, governmental level, and it's just these are people's lives. Having the freedom to consent, allowing adults to make decisions, is fundamental to freedom, as I understand it. As long as it's not hurting anyone else or impacting anyone else. Julie's chiming in. Same reason sex workers get prosecuted and Johns don't.
Good point. We
Yep,
Julie.
that's a whole other episode.
No, but it's true, right?
Yeah,
It's true. Yeah, only certain people are the ones to get prosecuted under these, get
yeah,
fired, right? The ones, I mean, yeah, if these folks who made pornography together, husband and wife, posted it behind a paywall, if they get fired for that, then what about all the people who watch porn? Are they equally disgusting, quote unquote? Should they all be, and that's what kills me is everybody who's like Stormy Daniels is in the news right now, and there's this whole right wing shaming of her. I'm like, okay, I know how many of you watch porn? Probably most of you. So it's okay to watch. You're going to shame the people who are in it in a legal profession doing what they want with their own
yeah.
bodies.
And if we're talking about relationship dynamics too, like the consensual nature, right? The difference between infidelity or cheating and non-monogamy is the consent.
Yes.
So we're cool with unconsensual
Oops.
non-monogamy. We're cool with compulsory monogamy and like unethical monogamy to use their own words, but like actually choosing it, being knowledgeable about it, discussing it, that's problematic. So denial is cool. Actually addressing something, yeah, I get really stuck on it. That's why I've told you, and I share this all the time. I don't even like the terminology ethical non-monogamy because it infers that it's inherently unethical. I'm much more interested in the conversation around unethical
I,
monogamy.
I don't think it does infer that.
I
I think
appreciate
because, as you say, like, like all the people who are in marriages where there's infidelity, where they're cheating and they're lying to their partners, that is unethical, right? So this distinguishes, anyway, I mean, this is your field, not mine. I'll respect whatever you
that.
want. But I think ethical non-monogamy is a really good term
Yeah,
as somebody like me who's about it, because it's like, oh, okay, yeah, there's this whole ethics to it. And, as I said, that, my understanding of the community is like the consent, the communication, the conversations is really top notch. And a
yeah.
lot of people, like, how do you tell somebody, I'm not ready for a monogamous relationship, or I don't want one right now, or I'm seeing other people, I have other partner, like, how do you have these conversations? And people in the ethical non-monogamy community like are really good at that.
Well, and you're actually bringing up something that's really important to address because not everyone is. A lot
Well,
of people are afraid. Like, there's a conversation happening right now among a number of other educators in this space about the fear of leaving a partnership because of the reflection of society of going, see, it doesn't work.
yeah.
See, and this need to like be perfect and get it all right. No, we absolutely make mistakes. There is just space for them in this context. Ideally, things like jealousy, for example, are a tool to build intimacy, connection, personal growth. It's not something to be avoided. It's not wrong. It's just happening. And so it's not about whether you have it or not. It's about how do you deal with it. Oh, and I don't want to miss these. Mama Julie, I love all these comments. I refer to myself as an ethical non-monogamous because otherwise people assume I'm dishonest to partners. it also emphasizes to partners that I expect honesty and transparency. I love that. Yeah. And that's why I say consensual non-monogamy, because to me, it's really, again, about those agreements, that consent, everyone's involved.
So at the beginning, so if you're this, I don't know if you, how do you, when you meet somebody new, how do
Mm-hmm.
you talk?
Well, I'm about as out as one can be at this point in my life. Um, so there are, speaking of things being online, even dating is very prevalently online. I do meet people IRL, and I'm straightforward. I'll use an example. So I made a new friend, and asked this let this friend know that I would like to go on a date. And they responded, "Oh, I actually, I have a girlfriend." I said, "Great. So I'm non-monogamous, and I'd love to know what your relationship agreements are." Because that's not a dead end to me.
Right.
But I'm going to respect whatever their agreements are, or it's going to open up a beautiful conversation for that couple to explore what that means.
Yes. Excellent. What was the answer?
Um, what fortuitous timing. And so I'll let you know. I'll be seeing them this weekend.
Like sprinkling little fairy dust wherever
a
you
little,
go.
a little CNM fairy. Exactly. But yeah, it's something for me when I was earlier in this part of my life in this chapter. I was still there. There are poly specific and ENM specific dating apps, multiple now. There used to be one. There are a
Yep.
number now. Social apps. They also have like events and also dating. And I was on the traditional, the Bumbles and the whatnot. And it was a question. I was like, when do I mention this? Like, is this a third date? Is this a, like, how do I, And again, I learned everything the hard way so that you don't have to. The earlier, the better. Date one. These are my dating agreements. This is how I operate. I am partnered, I am unpartnered, I am, etc. You don't have to go into the whole diatribe of your entire relationship agreement because you are just getting to meet each other. But sharing that, hey, I operate from an expansive relationship model. And what that means is da 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 da. And then again, I also lead with questions. I like to know where they are at. How do they date? Are they partnered or unpartnered? And that usually gets people who aren't, in the space going like, well, we're on a date. Of course I'm not. And I'm like, well, not necessarily. And it just invites a very
The
interesting
fact
conversation.
that you uh, that you talk about relationship agreements, it's so great because most people probably don't have relationship agreements. They just kind of float along, and now we're in a relationship, and one person has all kinds of expectations, and another person has expectations, and you've never talked about it, and you've never made an agreement.
Yeah.
So it's great modeling for people of like, yeah, you got to talk about the hard things. You got to put it
Yeah.
out there. What are the rules here, right?
Exactly. And they change. There's a great quote from Esther Perel: unspoken expectations are resentment waiting to happen.
Oh boy.
Right? That hit.
That's so true. Yeah, and you can't anything. I've asked people as I've been dating, "Are you single?" Yeah, and I got that. I'm like, "What?"
Mhm.
Like you might. I'm asking.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'd love to know where you stand on that. I love anything that gets people to kind of realize they're making a choice. Like I'm all about, again, consent, choice. Like, just know, like, this, you're here because you're choosing to be here. How are you choosing to be here? What is this agreement? Yeah, I just wanted to touch on that too. The agreements. That is something a lot of people, I think, assume that's what vows are or labels are. Well, you're my boyfriend, therefore XYZ. And they
the
won't
diff-
even define things like cheating. What is cheating? Tell me what cheating is specifically to you.
so,
Where is that line?
right.
It's not
Like,
the
how
same
about
for everyone.
sex? Is that cheating?
What
Emotion?
is sex?
Yeah, oh,
What parts of your body does it include? What kind of sex? Yeah.
that's right. I was
And then emotional. I mean, there are people, you can cheat emotionally depending on what your agreements and your boundaries are. So understanding all of those things, again, the first step is you need to understand them for yourself. Then it's a conversation with your partner to explore it, and understanding that it may change over time because we do grow. And that's the beauty of expansive relational dynamics and having a relationship agreement, which is a living, breathing document, is it grows and changes with you. It's a relationship that has the space for both of you to
that's
expand. Like, I like,
yeah.
yeah.
Oh, no, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, like, something I've been hearing myself say recently is like, you're working for your relationship, ideally. Your relationship should be working for you. So is it a container in which both of you can explore, be curious, can fuck up because you need to be able to, unintentionally fuck up and learn from it. Mistakes are a part of the process. And yeah, but I just want to note the time. We've got 10 minutes here, y'all. Got Lisa for another 10. So if you have any questions, anything about non-monogamy, legal protections, lack thereof, Lisa's work, I'm here to answer questions as well, as you're a non-monogamy nerd. But yeah, and Lisa, if you have questions, please, girl.
As I'm out there in the dating world now, I occasionally ask Allie, like, how do I say, how do I say,
I'm your Cyrano, your non-monogamy Cyrano.
gives me this amazing language
Yeah.
to use. It always ends with the question too. And the question part I have to remember, like, well, here's how I feel, but I'd love to know what you think. Right? That's, I think, a key part of it. And of course, to invite them to say, well, and one thing about dating is, you really don't know these people at all, right? So
Mm-mm.
cute and you go out and you like them, right? But I'm always reminding myself, as like my therapist friends tell me, you don't really know this person.
This is a stranger.
Right?
Yeah.
Long after a few dates and you think they're great and you really do not know them. And so I think it's so important to ask all those questions, all that, well, what are you thinking about this, and what are your expectations, and what, because I form all these things in my head that I think they're thinking, and I'm generally
Yeah. Yeah, because we're only ever able to intake people through the filter that is us and our life experience. So the more questions we can ask, and we can let them not only just tell us, but show us, because that's the other thing. They can say, but time is the only thing that really shows you who someone is and how they want to show up consistently. Oh, and we've got a question from Mama Julie. Legal question. If someone, wait, I'm not sure if this is a typo. If someone in a dress and protects
I'm pretending.
relationship status is discriminated against in employment, what are that person's legal resources?
Okay, and that jurisdiction is discriminated
Oh,
against.
okay.
Okay, she means is
Oh,
in the jurisdiction where there are protections like Somerville. What are their legal resources? So there's probably a local civil rights organization that the city has, and that would be the place to start. And you could also ask, you could ask your local bar association for a civil rights attorney in that jurisdiction. So sometimes contact me from states where I don't practice, and I'll always tell them, contact your local bar association for a referral to a civil rights attorney. And if you're discriminated against or harassed or abused, you want to document everything, save everything. I can't tell you how many people come to me and say,
yes.
but I deleted them. Here's my phone. Do you think you can get it back for me? No, I can't. So
You're not a hacker, Lisa?
and so please save
Yeah,
everything and document the best you
absolutely.
can.
And there's the resource really quick. I just want to chime into local. Absolutely, find what you can, but also know that, like I said earlier, and I'll drop them in the comments in the caption here. There are organizations like the Chosen Family Law Center, which can provide referrals and recommendations as well.
I love the phrase chosen family. There's a beautiful song with Elton John and another singer about chosen family. And we don't have to be related to relate. We don't have to
Yeah,
share
I love that.
the name. And as a foster mom, I relate to this with my foster children. So chosen family is a really beautiful.
Yeah. Oh, and Julie just followed up. Can they
Hell
sue? Is the
yeah.
question on it.
If there's an discrimination law, that's what you get. You get a lawsuit. So sometimes it's easier to go through the administrative thing if you can't find a lawyer. It's very difficult for people to find lawyers. There's only one of me, and I have a law firm with about 10 lawyers. But, uh, you know, uh, we get many, many people who reach out to us for representation, and we're always very happy to talk to people if they're a victim. But if you're in Massachusetts and you're in one of these jurisdictions and you're discriminated against, you should probably start with the local administrative agency that administers the law, because then you don't need a lawyer and they will probably help you. And hello, Danny Fingers, who watched the Hey, yeah.
Burners, what's up? For those who don't know, Burning Man is a large
Who knows?
music cultural festival. But we're in a bubble in LA. There are people who don't know Burning Man, I think. Oh yeah, and then the sweet life. Yes, save everything in all caps. It makes a difference. As someone who had to go through a 5 year, three
Oh,
lawsuits in 5 years,
like
save everything. the
Yeah.
only reason I won is because I had one piece of documentation. One piece of documentation got me my win in that case. Save everything.
And talk to witnesses. If somebody's there, if you're getting discriminated against and there's a witness, just say, hey, can I get your phone number real quick? Save anything pertaining to a witness.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and especially with employment. I mean, luckily there's generally quite a paper trail, assuming everything's above board. So, Google Drive is your friend. Get a backup, get it all in there.
For sure.
Absolutely.
Or
Absolutely.
here's
It,
something, which means, um, even if somebody is treating you really badly, you want to kind of take the high road. You don't want to give them anything that they can use against you.
yeah, yeah. Curate. What you say? No.
And that are feminist enough today. Oh, try women. Allie, what's
Um, well, I move in the poly and non-monogamy circles, so there is a higher percentage, I will say, in that space. Um, this is I want to have a conversation about this at another point. This will be a dot 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 to end this with, but we have a lot of conversations about toxic masculinity in the world right now. I actually want to also talk about toxic femininity. I think there's a really important uncomfortable conversation that's worth
well,
having there that keeps us very divided in ways that aren't helpful.
Daisy? I would say if you're on apps, put it in your profile that this is important to you. I only women who are feminists. I think everybody should put in their profile the things that are important to them. It save you a lot of time.
I invite defining it too, though, because again, feminist can mean different things to different people. So, like, I believe that people, regardless of gender identity, should have the same opportunities. So that makes me a feminist. That's what it means to me. So just little things like that. I like to get descriptive because labels are a conversation starter. They're not like a period at the end of the sentence.
That's true. Thanks,
Yeah.
Daisy. Good question.
Awesome.
Good luck out there.
Yeah.
Better you
It's
than
wild. Try and have fun. Well, I've got a couple minutes left, so I just want to thank you. If there's like not to put you on the spot, but if there's like a closing, if there's a closing thought that you would like to
I
share with us.
want to say that I feel like civil rights for polyamorous folks is one of the great new issues of our time. And I feel very strongly that they deserve full equal rights, whether it's in family law, housing, employment. We're going to get there. It's just going to take time. So let's get it sooner rather than later because people are living their lives and they deserve to be
Right
treated
now.
just like everybody else.
Exactly. People are losing their children in
Oh,
ridiculous battles in court right now. It's a shame. Is if there's one thing I'll say, and I'll add to this, if there's one thing that people can do today, right now, to help this at any level, what would that be?
that you said is fighting for rights
So there's
for poly.
yeah, there's a number. There's Open, there's Chosen Family Law, there's a number. Modern Family Institute. This is like a group effort. There's a organization at Harvard, I believe, as well as student-run organization. So I'm going to drop a bunch of resources in the comments here. There is a toolkit, like I mentioned earlier, that will be coming out with a ton of resources that you can take to your city council person and start pushing for these same ordinances locally as well. This is a group effort. We're in this together. We're a big chosen family
Yeah.
making this change together. So, oh, thank you, Julie. You two women are so brilliant and amazing. Thank you for this informative conversation. Thank you for being a part of it. We're here because of and for you. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
Follow
And
up.
thank you, Lisa. Thank you so much. Thank you, Lisa. And thank you, everyone. And feel free to keep chiming in the comments. I look at all of them. I appreciate all of the support, and I will answer all of your questions. So thank you so much for joining us today at Open Dialogue with Passport to Pleasure and me, Allie Iseman, your non-monogamy nerd. Have a great day.
Go girl.